Last night we had our study on the part that angels play in our salvation. I would like to spend this morning period continuing the same thought, perhaps from a little different approach, and continue to see the ministration that the angels fulfill in our behalf. There's a very interesting example of this recorded for us in 1 Kings, the 19th chapter. This entire chapter gives us a very good idea of how merciful God is, how interested the angels are in fulfilling God's will in our behalf. As you read this 19th chapter of 1 Kings, you will remember that it was just after the mountaintop experience up there on Mount Carmel. Elijah had had a magnificent victory. As you read that experience, there was one man facing hundreds, yes, thousands. In fact, he thought he was the only one that was worshiping the true God. The king, the wicked queen, Jezebel, all of her prophets of Baal were present. They tried all day to get God to answer their prayers, their gods, without success. Theirs was indeed a failure. And then here was one man, Elijah, that mighty prophet of God, and miracles were performed. God sent fire out of heaven. And a little later on, after Elijah had prayed, God sent rain out of heaven in abundance after 3.5 years of not one drop of rain. This was a tremendous experience. It was in Elijah's life. It was one of those mountaintop experiences. And as we read here, it reminds me of my experience, especially when I was younger. You come to a week of prayer. You enjoy the week of prayer. You feel that the Lord has been especially close to you. You go to camp meeting. You have a special blessing. But we're not praying for a one-day, a one-week experience. We don't want to fall into the experience that Elijah did. He became utterly discouraged. That old wicked queen sent a message to him. I'm going to get you, Elijah. You have no hope. By tomorrow evening, you will be as dead as some of those prophets of Baal. You're finished. I'm going to get you. That was the threat, and behind that threat, this vile queen had the potential to fulfill every word of her threat. From the top of Mount Carmel, from the victories, glorious victories that had been won, then we see Elijah down in the valley, right at the bottom, in the depths of despair. He fled. One translation says he ran for his life. Yes, he ran for his life, because the old woman had determined to kill him. But in verse 5 of chapter 19, 1 Kings, we read, after he'd run like that for about a day, he was tired. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him, and said unto him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake, bacon on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid down again. Poor Elijah, he'd really run for his life. But the angel was there to minister to him in the wilderness, It says he ran for a whole day in the wilderness. No wonder he was tired. Where would you find a nice cake baked on the coals? His guardian angel knew what he needed. His guardian angel had miraculously prepared that meal. A nice jar of cool, fresh water in the desert, in the wilderness. But that angel of his, that angel of yours, has our interests at heart. That's what he's there for. That's why he's there this morning, to help you through your classes, to help us in our various activities. But that wasn't all. Verse 7 says, and the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him and said, arise, eat, because the journey is too great for thee. See, the angel knew what Elijah was planning. Elijah wasn't really satisfied with only one day's journey into the wilderness. He wanted to make sure and put a greater distance as possible between him and that wicked woman. And he arose and did eat and drink and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Horeb. Here again, the kind, loving, sympathetic attention of his guardian angel. During that time, beyond a question of a doubt, this discouragement, this period where even Elijah, the great prophet, had sunk to the depths, I'm sure he had forgotten these many, many promises. One promise here in Psalms 103, you just read the entire chapter of Psalms 103. It has done me a lot of good. It has given me courage when I've been inclined to get down in some of those bottom of the valley experiences, which we shouldn't have, but because of our human nature, because we let go of his hand, because we forget that he is able. He will keep us on that mountaintop experience. Listen to these beautiful promises. Oh, I'd like to read the whole chapter. I wish you would someday, sometime, perhaps this afternoon, this morning, this evening, read Psalms 103. I'll begin with verse 8 and just read a few verses here. What a picture of our God, that wonderful God. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger and plenteous in mercy. He hath not dealt with us according to our sins, nor rewarded us after our iniquities. For as high as the heaven is above the earth, so high, for as high as the heaven is above the earth, so great is his mercy toward them that fear him. And as far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our transgressions from us. Verse 13. I think of my father. He was a big man. As a little fellow, I used to feel so safe in his presence. Many times I do naughty things. Now and again I get a good, real, hard hiding, as we call it. But I always realized that I deserved it. And the purpose of that punishment was to correct, because my father loved me. And as I read verse 13, I can't help but think of my loving father. Like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him. For he knoweth our frame. He remembereth that we are dust. How nice it is to know that even though we do hit the bottom sometimes, even though we allow the devil to get us down, even though in our moody human frailties, sometimes we forget to get down on our knees in the morning and ask God to see us through this day, that angel that has been appointed to guard you during that day, that our loving Lord instruct him to fulfill the commission of his assigned task, to guard us, to protect us, as we travel, as we study, as we work. And in this rush, in this routine, which is so easy to get into in an institution like this, it's so easy, perhaps, for us to get so busy getting ready to serve the Lord that in so doing we're serving the devil. I've noticed that in my work. You just get so busy. The pressures just build up on you that you get so busy trying to do the Lord's work that instead you defeat the very purpose of your existence and you serve the devil. Then you get down into the bottom of this valley and we forget the merciful God, but he doesn't forget us. He knows our weaknesses. He knows that we are human. In mercy, in pity, he commissions his angel to guard us, even though we go in ways that are not of his choosing, but of our own choosing. Verse 20 of that same chapter, 103, bless the Lord, ye his angels that excel in strength. This is the Bible description of one angel. They excel in strength. Let me tell you about my guardian angel on another occasion. It seemed to me as if this was it. As we say, humanly speaking, for me, it was curtains. The switch of my life was about to be switched off. And humanly speaking, there was no escape. About 8 miles from our Bigobo Hill station in Zaire was the village of Mpala. Now, we had been trying to establish a church in this village for about a year. We had been unable to do so. The young chief of the village, or headman of the village, had been determined that we would not open a church or a school or any organization whatsoever in his village. Again, it seemed as if the Lord used quite an unconventional method, but you could see the Lord's hand leading. And in the next few days, I'll tell you of a few more unconventional methods that perhaps to us are a little strange. But the Lord uses the methods that he sees will fit the occasion. It seems as if the Lord sent a herd of about 50 buffalo near the village of Mpala. This herd camped there. It just stayed there. Now you'll have these migrating herds moving here and there through the country. But this herd of approximately 50 huge black horned beasts had really, as we say, parked right in that vicinity. And they were completely destroying the crops of Mpala village. Mpala himself, the headman, who is called by the name of his village, Mpala himself was a great hunter. He had tremendous connections with a witch doctor. He had some of those charms that if you were lucky enough to be able to afford how to pay one of those fees for a little bushbuck horn, which the witch doctors have filled up with special power. That little kalemba, they call it. It's a bushbuck horn into which the witch doctor has placed the crushed leopard's teeth, portions of the tail of a buffalo are ground up, the hair, the liver, or a portion of the liver of a lion are all powdered, besides a few other things that they concoct, and they are stuffed there in that little open hole at the end of the horn. A little bushbuck horn, possibly 10 inches, 6 inches even, maybe just the tip. And that is the kalemba. And with the kalemba, you can do anything according to Bahemba tribal custom. But very few can afford it. It would demand up to 25 goats, which is their main bartering currency. But if you can afford 25 goats, and most of those simple villagers only have 2 or 3 goats to their name, but if you can afford it and you can get that kalemba, you have assured yourself of protection against any evil. This headman, Impala, had one of these. He had gone after this herd of buffalo. There had been one lone bull that had chased him. Fortunately, there was a tree nearby. He had run for his life up into that tree, thrown away his weapons, sat there, and as I have had to do on 1 or 2 occasions, looked down on those black, shiny horns and those bloodshot eyes as they look up at you, just daring you to come down. This was the experience that Impala had gone through. Well, it had shaken him. It had shaken his confidence in kalemba, that bushbuck horn charm, that all-powerful charm. The buffalo still camped right there alongside his village. There were some dense jungles surrounding his village, and in the depth of those jungles, the buffalo stayed. Every night they'd come out, they'd raid a portion of the garden. It was the time when the mealies were just starting to tossle, when they looked the nicest. The sweet potatoes, the monkey nuts. This was the time of the year when they were just before they started to bear. Sugarcane, kaffir corn. Finally, after Impala had had this experience, he sent 2 of his messengers up to call me. Please, Bwana, bring your gun. Please come and help us. We need your help. I went down. Impala was waiting for me. I talked to him. We discussed the possibilities of trying to help him. He pointed out to me how that one entire section of approximately 40 acres had been completely destroyed. He said, now that they have practically finished the area over to the east of the village, I know the buffalo will start in the area to the west of the village. He took me out. He showed me several of his very choice areas where the crops had always done the best. As we were looking around there, sure enough, in one section you could see where just the previous night, just a few hours before, this herd of 50 buffalo had been there. I said, let's go after them, Impala. I said, I've got a God that will help us. I reminded him of the experience I had heard that had happened about a week before. I said, you know, maybe you have confidence in kalemba. Maybe you think that kalemba can save you. Oh, yes, he said. And he unbuttoned his little jacket. There, strapped into his belt, was kalemba. He gave it a little loving pat. Yes, I've got my kalemba. I've got my kalemba. I'm ready for the hunt. I said, no, friend. You take off that kalemba if you want me to go with you on this buffalo hunt. Oh, but Bwana, hii haiwezekani hata kidogo. Maana nikitoa kitu hiki nitakufa. I cannot take off this kalemba. If I take off this kalemba, I will die. The buffaloes will kill me. No, I said. I don't agree with you. You have sent for me. This is my hunt. And if I go on this hunt, you take off kalemba. Otherwise, I will go back to the mission. Well, under great protestation, he removed his kalemba. Very lovingly, he gave it to one of the young men that had accompanied us out to the garden for the man to carefully take back. What a treasure he had there. We started out on this hunt. We followed this herd of buffalo. As we approached the little hills up off in the distance, he said, the headman told me, he said, if they're not in this immediate jungle where they have been, sometimes they go through the open plain up into the foothills about 3 or 4 kilometers away. And during the heat of the day, up in the hills there were some dense jungles where they would seek the shade during the heat of the day. As we approached the jungle, we were climbing gently over the hills, valleys on both sides, rolling hills, green grass. And up ahead, maybe a kilometer away, we could see the rim of dark forest, the jungle. Impala was ahead, two other hunters behind. I was following the leader. He stopped. And up ahead, maybe 300 or 400 yards across a little valley, the ridge of the hill went in sort of a semicircle, a horseshoe shape. We were planning on going around up into the forest, but as we looked straight across the valley, Impala stopped, and with those eagle eyes of his, he said, "I see a buffalo." As we looked, I could detect a dark object up there. I couldn't see that it was a buffalo. He said, "There's one big buffalo. The herd," he said, "is most likely gone into the jungle, but this is one of their scouts that is just guarding there, that is protecting the herd to give them the warning necessary." He said, maybe that's the one that chased me. Maybe that's the big bull that came after me." He was getting quite excited. But he said, he's dangerous. But he said, "Let's go down and take the shortcut, go right across the valley and approach him from just below, and we will have a very close chance, a good shot at him." I could see wisdom in his guidance, but I called the other two. I called Impala. I said, "I want to talk to my God who is much more powerful than any of your Kalembas." We got down, we prayed, we asked for protection, we asked that the Lord would deliver us, we asked that the Lord would give us a few of these buffalo. The Africans were starving, literally. They were beginning to feel the pinch of all the destruction that this herd had done. If we could shoot 1 or 2 or 3 out of the herd, it would drive the herd away. They would not come back to that area. It would save the western portion of those gardens. I prayed. As I got up, I told the 2 other hunters to remain. They each picked a tree, a convenient tree, and went and squatted down at the base of the tree. The headman and I started down the valley. It was only a short distance across there and up the other hill. As we peeked over, as we reached the crest of the hill and looked over, sure enough, there was this huge buffalo bull, all by himself, standing in grass, grass just high enough to cover most of his body, but his head and neck were showing, huge pair of those ugly black shiny horns on him. We didn't expose ourselves enough. The wind was in our favor. He didn't know we were anywhere around. I offered another word of prayer, took aim and shot, and he dropped dead. In that tall grass around him was the entire herd of 50 buffalo. We thought it was farther on ahead. We thought he was standing there alone. But as that shot rang out, that whole hillside just sprang into life, grunting, snorting, bellowing. And the buffalo's first instinct was to get to the nearest clump of jungle. The jungle on ahead was at least 500 meters away. Down this little valley, through which we had passed, was the closest. About 200 yards away was a dense clump of jungle. And these buffalo run for the first cover they can. As they sprang to life, their first instinct of the leaders, run downhill to the nearest jungle. We were right in the middle of that stampeding mass of buffalo, standing there with nothing to protect us. My father had had an experience like that once, and I had remembered what he had told me. Fire into the herd, empty your magazine into the herd, and hope that you will that the stampede will break, that they will leave you a little place. I emptied my magazine into the herd. As they came down that hill toward us, it was an unbroken mass of grinding horns, bellowing beasts that were determined to get to that forest, and we were right in the middle of their path. My gun was empty. My pockets had a few cartridges, but there was no time to reload. As they approached, I bowed my head. Behind me, the headman was desperately, hysterically grabbing me, almost pulling me down. What shall we do? I'm going to die, I'm going to die. They're going to kill us, they're going to kill us, he said. He was desperately afraid. When I realized that I had done everything I could, then I left it to the Lord. Dear Lord, please send your angel to protect us. Please show this heathen headman how powerful you are. That guardian angel stepped in between me and that onrushing, stampeding mass of buffalo. As they came down that hill, nothing fazed them. 5 shots right into them made no effect. According to the measurement that I took, when they got 7 feet from me, and as I watched them coming, I said, this is it. It's all over with. There's no hope. But no, my angel was there. And as he stepped out in front of me, ye his angels that excel in strength, that great herd just parted. Half of them went past on the right, half of them went past on the left. I could have reached out my hand and touched them as they went by on either side, standing there perfectly in the open. That angel who excelled in strength parted them. Dear young friends, we need not fear the devil. Although he does go around like a roaring lion, Isaiah tells us here in chapter 63, verse 9, talking about Jesus and the ministry of angels, how the children of Israel were treated, how the Lord guarded them in spite of their rebellion, in spite of their murmuring. In all their affliction, he was afflicted, and the angel of his presence saved them. Over here again, referring to the mighty power of God, it says, I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Our God is able. He is mighty to save. And with the ministration of angels, we are sure to succeed today.